So today's project, we're back on this car, 93 VW Cabriolet. Went and got it aligned a while ago and drove it afterwards, and I hadn't driven it in a while, and the brake pedal was a lot softer than I remember it. So one thing I've never inspected on this car is the rear brakes. So today we're going to get into the rear brakes, and if it's like any of these I've ever worked on, the rear wheel cylinders are going to be leaking, and we can probably put some grease in those wheel bearings, etc. So got it jacked up, get the wheels off, and we'll get after it. And sorry for the chainsaw in the background, wouldn't be one of my videos without it. Okay, this will be pretty much the same for any VW with rear drum brakes. Pull the dust cover off, take the cotter pin out, this little keeper adjusts your preload. You don't run this down super tight, just snug, just like that. Nut's going to come off. There's a washer and a bearing behind here. They could probably use some repacking. Now a lot of times you're not going to be able to get this drum off. There's part of the self-adjusting mechanism under here. Let's see if I can remember where it is. And there's a wedge that falls down in that self-adjusts the brakes. If you go in, I can feel it with a spring. So there's a spring that pulls that down. Typically you get up under it. It's probably right about there. I'm going to have to resort to a light. But you can push that wedge up, and then the drum will usually come off. See, it won't come off now. I worked on cars every day. I could hit that pretty quick. There were a lot of these cars around then too. Not so much anymore, but there's the spring. There we go. Now that went up, and this should come right off. It's pretty dusty in there, so we'll clean that out. So anyway, this is what I was talking about. This thing is wedge shaped, and it'll go down in and expands the shoes. So you come in through a lug nut hole and shove that thing up like that, and that'll release the shoes enough it'll come off. If you don't do that, you'll be fighting this thing forever. So let's look behind the boots here. As I suspected, fluid's pouring out. Since I expected that, we ordered some wheel cylinders on eBay. So next, take the brake line loose, and I believe there are 5 or 6 mil Allens behind here that'll this whole wheel cylinder will come out. Let me get those tools. So this should be an 11 millimeter fitting on this brake line. Just don't want to round it off. This car's unrusty enough. Hopefully it'll come loose. There we go. Alright, I'm going to leave that a little bit loose. We're still connected. I believe this is going to be a 5 millimeter Allen in here. It's a 5 or a 6. Make sure you get it all the way in, because you don't want to round it off. There we go. So now that that's loose, that should just pull right out of there. Lucas, we got good German ones to go back. So we will get the new wheel cylinder in there. So there's our new ATE wheel cylinder. Even says ATE on it. Comes with a little rubber plug in the fluid port. These are good to hang on to. You'd be amazed the number of things you need something to plug, and they're handy, so put them in your junk drawer. or if you lose the bleeder cap, I believe it's the same piece. It's got a little lip right there. You just turn that out so it goes on the outside of the shoe. Pretty much just stick it back in the hole, and you can squeeze the cups in. Assemblies, reverse removal. It's a good idea to put a little anti-seize on these because you never know the next time you'll be back in there. It could be years from now. Let's get the brake line started back in there. And I like to wiggle it a little bit so you don't cross thread it. You can take the bleeder out, get a little more space. Sometimes it's easier to start. Go ahead and get the fluid line kind of started before you attach the wheel cylinder to the backing plate. That way it doesn't have to be lined up perfect. You can move the wheel cylinder around and get it started. Get it snug with an open end wrench, and then always tighten it with a flare nut wrench. That way you don't round out the fitting. That should be tight. We'll just hand tighten the bleeder in there for now. So it'll stop dripping. Then we'll move to the other side and get that thing together. So now we have leaf blowers in the background. Wheel cylinders are in. We've let them drip for a while. Now we'll clean everything off real well. We'll wipe this off. We'll throw a little grease in there, and then we'll get the drums put back on. Drums are kind of nasty too, so we'll hose them out. So that's good enough. That drum can go back on. This wheel bearing was a little bit dry, so a quick way to pack it is take your grease gun or whatever grease you have, put a little in your hand, work it until it comes out of the rollers like that. Put that back in. That only goes on one way. Sometimes these nuts have a face that goes against. Looks like that side's been against the washer, so we'll put that on. You grab those black handle pliers. So we'll roll it a little bit. There's a procedure in the book where you tighten it down enough where you can just barely move this washer up and down. I typically kind of run it a little bit snug and just leave it right there, and that's usually good. The way this thing's made, you can move it around until it lines up with a hole, and this cotter pin's decent enough shape. We can probably get it back in there. You grab those other pliers, straighten it out a little bit. Put it down through, curl it back up. cap can go back on. Now we'll do the other side and then we'll bleed it. Alright, now that we're back together, we're going to bleed it. Go ahead and just push down and hold it. Alright, up. Alright, pump it a couple times. Pull the parking brake off and on a couple times. Okay, hold to the floor. Alright, that's nice clean brake fluid. No air. Barking dogs. Now we'll go to the other side. A little bit of air in that one. Alright, pump it up. Hold it. A little more air. Pump it up. Hold it. A lot more air. Pump. Hold. Pump. This fluid's still kind of dirty. We'll go a little more. Pump. Hold. Pump. Alright. Clean that off and we can put the wheels back on. When you're done, don't forget to put the little rubber cap back on the bleeder, and that keeps trash out of there. Alright, let's put the wheels back on. So it's the following weekend. We figured we'd take a look at the front brakes. They actually look pretty good. Plenty of pad. Rotors look pretty good too. But we're going to go ahead and bleed them and get the rest of that old brake fluid out of here. Okay, pump it up. Good. Hold. This bleeder is an 11 millimeter. Pump. Hold. That actually looks pretty good so far. So we'll clean that off a little bit. And since there's no cap on this one, the cap I saved from the other wheel cylinder, we'll just put on there. Now we have caps on the front. So we'll go to the other side, finish that one, fill up the master cylinder, call it a day. Okay, so maybe we're not done. I was topping off the master cylinder and thought I'd do a little closer inspection. It looks like there's fluid oozed all over the brake booster. Now that could be gear oil, but I'll clean that off and keep an eye on that. If that is the problem, or if that is brake fluid, we'll just have to replace the master, but I'm sure it's original. And also, while we're in here, is a good time to check the transmission fluid, because the seal for the speedometer cable kind of split, I guess, when I put it back together, and we're getting spots. So spots in the street where it parks. So I went in there and found gear oil, and that appeared to be the culprit. So we'll go ahead and check and see if we need to top it off. So after a drive, these brakes pretty much still suck. So we're going to go ahead and change the master cylinder. Plus it was leaking out the back. And clear some of this stuff out of the way so you can kind of see what's going on. I don't know how much I'll be able to get out of the way. Sprayed some blaster on there. My R11 millimeter. That one's gonna suck. Okay. Now we can go to a regular 11mm wrench and get them backed out of there. All the lines are off. These appear to be 13mm nuts down here. It's not the best angle. Could probably do it without a swivel. Not super tight either. Over here at the bench, I've already drained most of this fluid out. There's still a little bit in there. See if we can get these valves off. That's a 19. That one's the front. That one's to the rear. They may be the same thing, so it may not matter where they go back, but just keep them where they were, just in case. All right, now for the fun part. We have to get this master cylinder reservoir off there, and it just goes down in rubber grommets. Let's hope it doesn't break off. Or I don't punch a hole in it. It's really crusty under there. One side. Okay, we have success. Before we go any further, I'm going to try to get this little screen out of here and clean all that muck out of the bottom. It's our new eBay Source Master Cylinder, Melee company, Hamburg, Germany. So anyway, came with this roll pin. I'm not really sure what that's all about, but let's compare. Looks to be the same, except this one's aluminum. The other one's cast iron, I guess. These would be good plugs to save for plugging lines. This one was back here, right? Up here. Cleaned this out best I could because I could not get that screen out, so I just sprayed some brake cleaner in it and covered all the holes and shook it up and dumped it out a couple times. So that should be good enough. I'll go ahead and lubricate these grommets with a little bit of brake fluid. Should just pop down in there. It should just pop down in there. It is not having any parts of that. So basically I just kept pushing and pushing, and finally got one side looked like it was going to work in. Then you push like you feel like you're going to break it, and then push a little more, and it finally popped into the grommets. I'm going to go ahead and try to sort of half-ass bench bleed this. I don't have the right fittings to do that. Ideally, you would have tubing that would come out of the ports and back in, and you just sit here and pump it and keep pumping until all the air came out. I don't have that, so we're going to try to do what we can, just put some fluid in it. Okay, so I filled it up and it's dripping pretty much out of every port. So that's about the best we can do. Let's go ahead and put it back in the car. All right, a couple of them are started. Go ahead and get the nuts on and get it back into position. Try a 1/4 inch drive here. Okay, all those lines are tight. Sometimes you can put these in the car and bleed it right here, but the way all these lines come up and then go back down, I don't think we'll ever get the air out. There'll be air traps, so I'm going to have to raise the car and bleed them at the wheels, which is fine. That won't be any issue, and we'll get the rest of that old brake fluid out of there. So after driving this car for a while, brake pedal still kind of sucked, so you could also pull the parking brake up really far. So if you need further adjustment, you can come in here and adjust the parking brake cables. They were all the way up like they had never been adjusted. So there's a jam nut and kind of like a rounded nut that pull on the cable. You can break them free and then take some slack out of the cable. You want the parking brake to pretty much stop at 3 clicks, and that vastly improved the brakes in this car. So thanks for watching and subscribing. See you soon.